In life's journey, we must seek to reflect, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Road to Rediscovery with your host, Aubrey Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson, and I'm so excited that you're here with me. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them and to take it to the next level and help others who are struggling through dark times. My special guest is a body worker, therapist, healer, facilitator, and so much more. For over 25 years, she's taught so many people how to rediscover the body's true potential to heal through pleasure. Her new book, The Healing Power of Pleasure: 7 Medicines for Rediscovering the Innate Joy of Being, is inspired in part by her passion for sharing the real sensual relationship and the life of the body. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Julia Paulette Hollenbery to the show. Hi, Julia. How are you? So great to have you here.
It's great to be here with you. Hello. All is good here. The sun is shining in London.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. The sun's just coming up where I am. And so I just take joy in the ability to share beautiful sunshine with you. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us for a little bit. If we can start by sharing with the listeners, like where you're from. I know you mentioned UK, and what was life for Julia growing up?
Growing up, life was overwhelming and complicated and lonely and amazing and magical and mysterious and sensual. I was a little girl who absolutely loved being in the garden. Out there in the garden, I connected with the big blue sky, and at the bottom of our garden were golden wheat fields up to the horizon. There was a huge willow tree and flowers and insects, and there I really felt at home. But being in the houses or being at school, I found harder. I didn't know how to share with the people around me exactly how I was feeling. I didn't know how to share with them the times when I felt scared, and I didn't know how to share with them the beauty that I was in contact with out there in the garden.
I see. So you felt purity and deep connections with just about everything early on as a child, and that's fascinating. And you were finding trouble, as you mentioned, in expressing those connections and having those connections outside of the garden, outside of the home. But it sounded like you had your heels pretty dug in the ground in terms of your self identity. Would that be accurate, or were you still trying to feel your way through on who you were and how you fit in?
I think that inside of myself,
Mm-hmm.
I always felt clearly connected
Mm-hmm.
and solid and big
Beautiful.
and even wise,
Mm-hmm.
if I can say such a thing. I felt as a
Sure.
child like I saw a lot, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I really, really could be frightened very easily. And when that happened, I would leave my body, and I had no words for those experiences. I had
Mm-hmm.
no words mm, for how it was to feel afraid and how it
Yeah,
was to mm, not quite know how to connect with other people.
I
So
see.
my
I
self-identity
see.
was a mixture of things. I guess it
I
never
see.
is just one thing.
Yeah, and you raise a very good point. The It is a mixture of things for all of us,
Mm,
right? And so I know particularly uh, through children's upbringing and their lives, especially the intermediate ages of, like, say, ages 12 through 14, they're just trying to figure their way out each waking day, right? Trying to, figure out where they fit, where they belong, who they are. Um, and it sounds like you had a good mix of knowing for sure who you are, but there was some fear there, and I want to, for the listener's sake, I want to make sure that we kind of hone in on what was the driver for that fear, because there's a lot of things in this world that can drive anxiety, depression, um, uh, and trigger PTSD and things like that. But as in your situation, growing up in this fear that you felt, what was the driver of that fear? For me, it sounds like in what you're saying, not quite sure how to connect with people early on, because it was a different environment from your garden, from your home. What was that driver for your fear?
I think that when I felt criticized, I
Hmm.
found that really, really difficult.
I see.
And then I didn't feel accepted or welcomed or
Mm-hmm.
known or understood.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't kind of know what to do. I guess I felt different from people. And it wasn't actually until decades later
Mm-hmm.
that I was able to piece the story together. You know how healing and evolution, our personal stories, kind of takes time. It's like a jigsaw puzzle or like a
Right.
book with different chapters.
Right.
And in a way, it wasn't till a long time later that I realized that for me,
Mm-hmm.
there had been trauma in my birth. And so I had
Ah,
started in a way from a difficult place. My resource had been the spiritual world.
I see. I see. Yeah, and I wanted to talk with that if I can, and ask you about this. Okay, can you share with us, or describe this constant contact you have with this invisible world, and particularly, is it a gift? Is it something that people, everyday people, have the potential to tap into, to connect with? If you can just share some insights for us on that.
It's kind of like, thank you for the question. It's kind of like listening out all of the time
Hmm.
to a different frequency of data.
Mm,
So I was and am often aware of information. And sometimes that's like an image.
right, right.
Sometimes it's a knowing. Sometimes it's a hunch that I just need to walk down that road and turn
Hmm.
left.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sometimes it's a feeling in the body
Hmm.
and a sense that I need to take action
I see.
in a
I
particular
see.
way.
Hmm.
So it's a question of listening out to that information that is always available.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And it sounds like there's another level or layer, of depth, um, that's innate, that's within yourself, that you must explore to have that connection. Is that am I tracking you properly, or?
I had a psychotherapist who once described me as having stayed in contact with the essential innocence. I don't know if my capacity is really any different than anybody else's.
Okay. Okay.
It's just, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. What I do know
Okay.
is
Mhm.
that the information is there all of the time. And maybe in a sense, my process was in the opposite direction than many people's process is. So
Mhm.
perhaps for many people, they begin more in the material world, in what's here and now, right here and now.
Yeah.
And they learn to become more sensitive to the subtle, invisible, imaginal, spiritual information. And perhaps the story of my life, my personal journey, is in the opposite direction. And it's not only for me, there are many others who also have their journey in this direction, but it's perhaps less, less usual. The people who begin, shall we say, in the spiritual world, in contact with the big all, and who have to learn manifestation
Right.
and materialization
Mhm.
and form and substance and
Mhm.
communication in
Mhm.
a slightly different way. But in the end, everybody, to be a full human being, needs to live and embody both these worlds, the material and the spiritual. We need ego, we need identity, we need substance, as
Mhm.
well as we need incoming information that
Yes.
inspires us
Mhm.
and guides us.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Tremendous. So in connecting with the spiritual world and feeling connected with the spiritual world, going there for information whenever you need it, whenever you crave it or want it, does having that ability and having that at your disposal, does it affect or change your perspective on the material world when you interact with your physical environment?
So I just want to add that certainly when I was a child, I
Mhm.
felt flooded
Mhm.
by that
Okay.
sensitive information. It wasn't a choice.
Gotcha.
And I think as a child, I didn't know how to be with the sensation that the top of my head was open and there was access to all of this.
Yes.
And for me, often the material world was difficult. Limits?
Yeah.
Gosh, I've
Yes.
really had to learn how to be with that.
Mm.
And form and structure.
Mhm.
So I guess everybody has their gifts, everybody has their challenges,
Right.
everybody has their blessings, everybody has their personal journey and learnings. And I think that it looks and feels and happens quite differently for each person.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you clarifying that for me and for the listeners, Julia. So, wanted to know, um, has there or was there ever a time that you felt like you lost touch with your authentic self? And if so, how did it affect you? And how did you respond to regain your authenticity?
It's a great question. Um, I don't know that I have ever lost that,
Okay.
actually,
Uh-huh.
even in the most difficult times.
Mm.
I think that has been my prompt and guide.
Hmm. Hmm. I appreciate that. I truly, truly appreciate that, Julia. I know there's a lot of the listeners who are struggling through different types of struggles, right? Different types of despair and dark days. Some of those may include really identity, right? Understanding who they are, what's their purpose in the world, right? And it sounds like even in those types of uh, challenges or despair, um, there's got to be something that keeps us grounded and secure in knowing who we are. And it sounds like you've had that grounding for sure.
I guess that I, even as a small child,
Mm. Even as a
knew,
child.
even as a small child, I knew that I would write a book one day.
Amazing.
And half a lifetime ago,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
began writing the first part, raw, emotional, ranting, really.
Yes.
One poem from that made it into the finished book.
Oh, I can't wait to
And
hear this.
a few years ago, I sat down to write, and it just poured out of me.
Hmm. Hmm.
So for me, the call of the soul has
Yes.
always been really clear. And in the difficult times, there was the fear that I wouldn't make it to fulfill.
Gotcha. I see.
this sense. And I think that everybody inside has got those promptings. It's often just a question of quietening enough to really heed those whisperings and hints and prompts, because it's so easy in a stressful, modern, busy, fast world to override those impulses and to ignore them. And I think everybody knows that it's wise to listen to it, but it's one thing to know that, and it's quite another thing in the middle of the maelstrom to actually be able to heed it. And sometimes you don't know what the action is to take. And again, for me, it was just putting one foot in front of the other, doing the best that I could with healing myself.
Right.
And it's unbelievable and amazing and wonderful, full of grace that I have written the book, and it is being internationally published, and I hope that it will indeed help a lot of people. It is written from my heart. It's absolutely what my heart knows and wants to share. So yeah,
that's beautiful. And we're gonna let the listeners know how they can connect with you and get a copy of your book, or pre-order a copy of the book for sure. This is absolutely tremendous. I mean, I'm excited for this book to release, because I want to pick up a copy and read that raw, free expression, right, of the poem that you just described, that you did, the one that got captured into the book. And I just want to see what that freedom looks like, what that rawness and emotion, just overpouring from your soul looks like, expressed in words in your book. So thank you for that. Thank you for keeping that and preserving that as part of the book, for sure. Really, really appreciate that. So Julia, I want to start talking about the great work that you are doing in helping others, and the potential that people may either realize or don't realize that they have for healing their body through pleasure. Now, I guess I want to first off start with a statement in your story that I found very, very thought-provoking. Okay, it was very profound to me, and it's how you describe your work. Okay, it's where you say, "This work is an opportunity to remember what you already know and to be who you really are." Now, can you explain that for a little bit? Is this in reference to rediscovering the connection, the innocence, and the purity that we felt as a child, or if you can break that down for us and unpack that a little bit for the listeners?
thanks. I think, it's many things. It's many layers and dimensions.
Mm,
And in the first instance, it is descending from the many thoughts and ideas that we have about what we think we need to do and who we think we are, because we're scared that so and so told us off, or we haven't completed that, or we're angry because that person should have done that.
right.
And all of that is such a bunch of distraction. And when we are able to descend underneath all of that, we come into contact with more of our sensate, sensual body.
I
And
see.
when we do, we are more in contact with the reality of who we are. My sense is that the body is soul infused, is soul enriched.
Mm-hmm.
There is not a separation of soul floating in the sky and body down on the earth. My sense is that the body contains worlds within worlds and universes within universes.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that somebody can come into contact with their feeling and sensate self in the moment, the more they find out about who they really are in terms of the deepest, biggest,
Mhm.
truest,
Yes.
uniquest soul sense of themselves. And the kind of stuck and frustrated and, oh, my shoulder hurts, reality of right now.
Right. I
And
see.
it's a mixture of all of that stuff. It's
I see.
not one single thing.
Gotcha. A lot of layers and a mixture of many different things. And even though it sounds like it's in shambles or in complex, it makes sense because there are a lot of different universes within us. There's a lot of different worlds within us, and that offers layers. And so I appreciate that clarification, for sure, Julia. Thank you so much. So we all know that no two people are alike, right? And you've worked with so many people in helping them feel connected and secure within their body and their existence. In order to help them with this, though, is there some connection that you must first have with them to feel their energy and just basically understand where they are in their current circumstances?
In lots of ways, the information
Mm,
is already there.
I
It's
see.
just a question of looking and feeling and sensing. So you and I are having a conversation right now, different continents. We don't know each other. And yet,
Mhm.
through our conversation, right, we're sensing and feeling and noticing and doing our best to really see and hear and
Mhm.
feel the other person.
Mhm.
I think that all healing arises out of relationship. So any client and therapist,
Right.
any healing process, anything really of value comes out of the alchemical relationship. So, and it's great fun. It's
Yes.
really good fun to see and feel and meet,
Yes.
really meet another person in authenticity. It's like, that's the pleasure, that's the delight. It's why you're doing this and I'm doing that, right?
Right.
And
Right.
it's why any of us set out in the first place on the healing journey, because we know that there's this deliciousness that is possible and we want to live it. And it
Hmm.
comes and it goes, but
Yeah.
we are seeking it best as we can.
Yes, we are for sure. And as humans, it's innate within us, right? To connect, to interact. No one can live on an island, you know. It's not sustainable for someone to have an existence, a lifelong existence of solitude. We are beings of connecting, but how we hone in and embrace, you know, our abilities to connect and not just think about, well, I'm human, I can talk to this person, but actually truly embrace it when we connect with people, and be mindful in the moment, knowing and feeling that we are connecting with this person. There's something magical happening between us in learning more about each other. I think that's where a lot more information comes in when you're very mindful and in the moment about that. Julia, I do a lot of mindful breathing and meditation and so forth. And there's a phrase that I heard years ago when I first started doing this, and it makes all the sense in the world. And it's very simply put, but it's the more we are silent, the more we can hear. And I thought to myself, wow, that really wraps it all up in a bow, you know?
It does. And if I may, would just like to slightly reframe what you shared.
Yes.
Because much as I am a fan of mindfulness, I kind of want to point people more towards the body and to sensualness, to the sensual fullness, because, yeah, I mean, mindfulness is awareness. It's not really the mind. And I guess my point is that the awareness lives in that body soulness. And so I think it's helpful for people to know that and to orient to the full width and breadth of the body located awareness.
Understood.
Where there is much more of the silence, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah, much more. And then more information comes in, you know. And I love that reframe for sure, because it shows the place and purpose for mindfulness, and it shows the place and purpose for sensuality, and connecting with that and feeling that and using that to connect with others. So it shows the purpose and place of those two, and the distinction between those two. So thank you so much for sharing that, Julia. Now, speaking of pleasure and the senses, okay, I know pleasure can be found in the senses, and I know there's different areas of sensuality in which you show that. But are there examples of pleasures that are found outside of the senses that you help people connect with? Are there any pleasures?
Would you forgive me if I pause this video? It's my daughter.
Oh,
and
yeah,
she's
absolutely.
phoned twice.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yep. Nope. Go right ahead. In fact,
she's 11 and she phoned twice, and I halted it just before, but she's called
understood.
twice. Let me call her.
Okay. No, absolutely. No, you're okay.
Hi, Ruby, is everything okay? I can't hear you all of a sudden. I can't hear you. I still can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Cool.
At first I muted, and then I paused the recording, and then I resumed recording, but forgot I was on mute. Sorry about that.
And I'm sorry to interrupt our conversation.
Worries.
She's 11 and it's her second day at secondary school.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no problem at all, Julia. I mean, life happens, and life does not hit the pause button, when we do things like this. So I can completely relate for sure. So are you okay with me covering that last question again?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, Julia, I know pleasures can be found in the senses, and you help people really discover and rediscover pleasure and healing through their senses, right? So, are there any examples of pleasures outside of the senses that you help people connect with? Are there any pleasures outside of the senses?
I mean, we are sensual creatures.
Yes.
And there are many who would say, well, maybe not many, but at least two people that I know of who said there are 12 senses that humans have, and they include in that not just the regular 5 senses, but things like movement and weight and balance, so that our whole experience is sensual.
Yes. Okay.
And we could also say that most people don't have the basic 5 senses open. So there is so much more, again, sensual, sensate, sensitive information that it's possible to feel. So all of the pleasures, I would say, do occur within the sensual, sensate, bodily experience. And when we're stressed, when we're hurt, when we're shocked, when we're traumatized, we tend to jump out of our and into our to-do lists and our fears and our judgments and our blames and our expectations and our plans. And then we are less in contact with those delicious pleasures of the senses. So yes, absolutely, can be so many things. It's there, not just in smell and sight and taste and touch, but in the multisensory experience, as we were talking about before, in those authentic meetings. There is that wealth of data. And within all the small details of every day, whether it is looking at the sunlight coming through the leaves in the garden, or a delicious cup of coffee that's got cream in it and it's just right for us. Yes. There is a complexity of experience.
Got it. Understood.
And when I look at you, I'm taking in not just a simple map of your face, but actually there is so much detail there. If I take the time or bother to look in the color of your skin, in the firmness of your flesh, in the detail of lines or not lines, or shine in the eyes, or so much.
Wow, there's a lot of information.
Delicious information. Yeah, pleasure.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I mean, there's a lot of information, and you just broke down, just a part of it. And it makes all the sense in the world. Like you said, the color of skin, the texture, the tightness, and the deepness of the eyes, and it brings in a lot of information, and the multisensory part of the world as well. So that makes a lot of sense, Julia.
Which I just jump in, forgive me, but it
Absolutely.
is so good to be seen like that and felt like that. It feels so damn good to be really physically seen. And It feels so good to give yourself the permission to really take in that information and not to evaluate it according to fashion or any other filter, but to really look and connect.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And that's what the listeners are looking for, right? When they connect with people, there's information they send and there's information they receive. And to give yourself the permission to receive that information, right? I'm receiving what you're telling me, and I am truly grateful and appreciate, the clarity in your expression. So that makes a lot of sense, Julia. So in your book, you are talking about 7 medicines, right? So can you just, without selling the farm and giving away the book, can you maybe give us a little inspiration behind these 7 medicines?
Sure. So I'll just say also that when I came to write, the 7 medicines were super clear. It was known to me what they were, these sequential step-by-step medicines.
Yeah.
So the first is slowing down. And it doesn't mean having to physically stop. It means slowing down, perhaps in the mindful way that you were talking about before, and there are many techniques, slowing down the very fast pace of our usual thoughts so that the body and the thoughts can be united at the same tempo. Very often people are eating or exercising or sexing while thinking of one thing. There is a dislocation between the body and the mind, and bringing them together is the beginning of sensitivity, is the way in. It's the first doorway. So it's a slowing down out of the very fast thoughts and the very fast vibration of agitation.
Makes sense. I understand.
Then there's body, my favorite. Which is really appreciate the amazing, beautiful orchestration that goes on inside our bodies unseen, that maintains our health and well-being. And the rich sensuality of the body.
Got it.
Depth is opening to the so much more than usually meets the eye information and awareness that we've been speaking about.
Yes, yes.
Already. And we can look in all sorts of directions. Usually us humans are very arrogant and we really think that we know it all.
Right.
But we only have to look at bits of biology or astrology or physics to realize how much more there is in reality than we are usually aware of. And that is humbling.
Understood.
Again, another doorway. Then, from the humility rather than arrogance comes the possibility of meeting in real relationship. And relationship is the next medicine. And very often we think of relationship as being something that we have. We're either, people talk about wanting a relationship or wanting to get out of a relationship as if it's a thing to have, rather than the reality that we are all of the time already in relationship with everything.
Right.
Whether it is our colleagues or our family or our intimate relationships or our pets or the garden or our neighborhood. We are already in the center of a web of interrelationships, and clocking that actually changes something.
I see.
And there's loads of practical tools about, how to relate well. And arising out of relationship, out of the meeting of any two or more things, is pleasure. Pleasure is somehow a kind of alchemy. And so I think, again, you and I are having fun in this moment, in this meeting. And if we're to bring our hands together and touch palm to palm, we'll notice the sensation. And in a way, there's pleasure without end.
Right.
In so many dimensions and senses, as we were just saying. Slow body, depth, relationship, pleasure. Next is power. They all connect sequentially. And power, unlike how we often think about it as power over somebody else, real power, authentic power, is being in alignment and vulnerability, not as a collapsed floppy heap necessarily. One might be for a time,
right?
But it is being vulnerable on a solid, grounded foundation.
Gotcha.
So that's empowering.
Yes.
It's fantastic fun. And the final of this series of 7 paradigm shifting, practical, spiritual medicines is potency. And potency is about actualizing potential.
Yes.
Potency is actually something that exists in the body. In craniosacral therapy terms, we talk about it as the light that's held within the water within every cell in the body. So it is our vitality, our vibrancy. Can talk about it in terms of mitochondria, and we know it in terms of our soul potential, and we activate it when we can find neutrality. And everybody, I think, knows the image of the caduceus, of these two snakes around a central staff. It is often used as a medical image. So our task is to rebalance ourselves within our own bodies and system and self, and to rebalance ourselves in relationship and interconnection with everything that is around us. And in this way, I hope and feel and believe and wish that we can together co-create a much more beautiful world.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I cannot agree more. If we all just do our little part, exponentially it can build, for sure. So Julia, where and how can the listeners connect with you, learn more about your great work, and maybe even pre-order a book, a copy of your book?
My book, The Healing Power of Pleasure, 7 Medicines for Rediscovering the Innate Joy of Being, is available everywhere that books are sold.
Great.
And my work, or more about my work, can be found at my website, universeofdeliciousness.com. And of course, like everybody, I'm posting on social media. And it would be lovely to hear from people. I would love to know how you find the book, and do reach out and say hello or something, or not, or yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to get them to connect. We're going to have direct links to where they can pick up a copy of your book, direct links to your website, as well as your handles for social media, and so they can follow you and learn more about who Julia is and what Julia can do to enhance my life. We'll make sure and have those direct links featured in the episode show notes. So
thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. They can click it and connect while they're listening to this wonderful conversation. Oh, fantastic. So once again, the book is The Healing Power of Pleasure, 7 Medicines for Rediscovering the Innate Joy of Being. Julia, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I truly, truly enjoyed this journey that we've taken together down this path, through these layers, to share the insights for the sake of the listeners, helping people who are having troubles with anxiety, fear, just finding their authentic selves. I truly appreciate you coming on the show.
Everybody can heal and change and transform themselves, and we live in an era with a great abundance of resources.
Yes, we sure do. We sure do. I totally agree. All right. So at this point, I would love for us to go into a segment I call 3 for the Road. And in 3 for the Road, that's where I ask my guests 3 thought-provoking, random questions, encouraging them to answer in 5 words or less. So what do you think, Julia? You think you're up for it?
Let's try.
All right.
I'm already
fantastic.
counting.
Already counting the words, right? Well, and by the way, none of my questions are cookie cutter. I don't ask the same questions to every guest. These questions are customized based on my guest's background and profession. Okay. All right. So let's start with number 1, kicking us off for 3 for the Road. And this one should be fairly easy. Okay. It's a fill in the blank. We are defined by our
story.
Okay. See, that's just one word. That's great. Fantastic. Okay. Number 2. What does instinctual power teach us?
Everything.
Everything. Okay. I
One
love it.
moment, everything.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
personalized, spontaneous wisdom and enjoyment.
Love it. And there's a sense of authenticity and a sense of rawness when that power comes by instinct and it's not forced, it sounds like.
Can save lives.
Can save lives. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, number 3 to top us off for 3 for the road, Julia. I'm going to give you a scenario, okay? You are asked to speak to a class of 9-year-olds, and you have the ability, the special power, to make one piece of advice that connects with them that they will all just automatically and magically do. What is that advice or statement?
To listen to and honor your own feelings
Mm.
and those of others. And that's more than 5 words.
That's okay. That's
But
okay. I mean,
9-year-olds.
no, this is deep, and the message is you want to make it clear. So no, if you go over 5, that's okay. I mean, you're on a tremendous path that I would not interrupt you. Awesome. So that makes sense. I understand that, and the 9-year-olds would understand as well. Oh, well, that's it for 3 for the road, Julia. Thank you so much. You were fabulous. You did a great job.
It's been a real pleasure
Well,
chatting with you.
likewise, Julia. Likewise, for sure. And look, I would love for us to stay connected. Okay. Maybe come back on the show 6 to 8 months later and give the listeners an update on what's going on in your life, how the book is doing, maybe a hint of a second book in the works or something.
I'd absolutely love to do that. And yes, ideas for further interesting subjects are cooking.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, my pleasure, Julia. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and chatting with us. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And as a quick reminder, the Rediscover Roadmap digital course is now available. This course allows you to take an introspective approach to your personal development and accountability using the 4 pillars to personal growth: self-awareness, humility, gratitude, and service to others. For a free preview and to register, visit theroadtorediscovery.com/course. That's the road, number 2, rediscovery.com/course. And also, if you know of anyone, a loved one, a friend, a colleague, a coworker who is struggling through despair, self-doubt, seems to be at the end of their rope with nowhere to turn, I humbly ask that you please share this show with them, because on the road to rediscovery, there are 2 things we want our listeners to know. Number 1, you're not alone. And number 2, there is always, always hope. The road to rediscovery, it's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon.
The Road to Rediscovery is an AJ Shark production.